Okay, here's our next one that we're going to do. Again, this story, I'm trying, as my theme of this class is that history still has influence on us today. This is a very important story that has to do with the modern world. It has to do with a guy named Muhammad, and you can see the years that he lived. All right, and so let's proceed with this story. Here we go. Okay, so the Prophet Muhammad is somebody who is extremely important still to this day to many people around the world. You can see those are the years he lived. These are AD years. This is after the birth of Christ. Okay, so he is what we will say, he is the founder and the creator of Islam, the religion of Islam. People who practice Islam aren't called Muslims. All right, he is the founder of that. He is. We'll get into how he's like Jesus here in a little bit, but that's what he should be known as and remembered as. He was born in a city in what we would today call Saudi Arabia, the Arabian Peninsula, and that city is called Mecca. If you recall, in my classroom, there is a poster right up by the clock of the place, which we'll get to in a moment, where Muslims come in Mecca. Okay, so that's his hometown. Look, this is a time period you would have to say where polytheism. Remember I said that the ancient world is dominated by polytheism and the modern world is dominated by monotheism. Okay, this is a time period where all that stuff is happening, and so he's coming from a place that has a lot of polytheism, but monotheism is beginning to make inroads into these areas. Obviously, the Jewish religion has been there for a long time, and Christianity has been there for over 500 years as well. So he's being influenced by monotheism. So the story goes that in sort of a strange fashion, Muhammad was an adult. He was married. He was a family man. But he kept sort of in a middle-aged time period of his life. He would disappear for a bunch of times. He would disappear for times at long periods of time, and nobody knew where he was. So he was either going up in the mountains or going into the desert or going into the forest or wherever he was going. He claimed that he was talking to the one true God, not directly, but he was talking to the one true God named Allah or Allah. And he said that the one true God spoke to him, and again, not directly, because Allah is too great to speak to a human directly. There was a middleman, the archangel Gabriel was the middleman. And so basically Muhammad said, I've been gone for these periods of time, days at a time, and I'm getting the message of God. Okay? And basically what Muhammad did was he started to write these things down. And so whatever Allah had said to him through Gabriel, plus Muhammad's statements as well, are put into, mostly the Quran is what Allah said. A lot of Muhammad's statements are in there as well. There's other works, there's other books, if you will, where you can read more specifically what Muhammad said exactly. And basically about how life should be lived on earth, how Allah wanted humanity to live life on earth. These were written down in a book called the Quran. Okay, so you'll see a lot of different spellings for the Quran. Lately I see it spelled with a Q, Q-U-O-R-A-N. I'll just use it this way for our purposes today. Some people like to call it the Muslim Bible. Not exactly sure if that's a great way to put that. I don't think that's the best way to put it. But certainly these are the Islamic Holy Scriptures. There's no disputing that. There are a lot of differences. One of the main differences being that the Bible has multiple. The Christian Bible has multiple authors. The Quran has one single author. Okay? All right, so let's continue. So part of what Allah wants him to do is to spread the word of Allah. Okay, so the obvious place where he starts doing this is his hometown. And his hometown becomes the first place where he tries to make people believe and follow the words of Allah. and the people that were in power in Mecca did not like it. And he was influential, and apparently he was able to get people to follow him. And he is basically thrown out of town. And he moves to a small city to the north, a little bit smaller city to the north called Medina. Now, one of the things I want to make sure you recall here is that Medina, I want to put this, I did this, you may have not seen this in a while, but remember this map, these maps I did a while ago of the Roman Empire and the fall of the Western Roman Scepter, split up Christianity. So I put Mecca and Medina over here. So you can see where they are in relationship to each other. So that's where, those are his two hometowns, roughly. Okay, so you get an idea based on all of this. Okay? Okay, so he moved there and he did a better job influencing the people there. Okay? And basically what eventually happens is he becomes the absolute leader of the city-state of Medina. Okay? And he decides that, okay, that's pretty good. I've got Medina sewn up as an Islamic city now. How do I spread my word even further? How do I spread my word even more so than I already have? What can I do to make the word of Allah get spread even faster? Well, I need an army, is what he decides. Well, where can he find an army? Medina is not quite big enough. Certainly he has a small group of followers, a relatively small group of followers there. But he decides the place to find an army is in the desert. So he goes out into the desert of the Arabian desert on the Arabian Peninsula, and he talks to the pagan tribes out there, the nomads of the desert. And he convinces these tribes, who usually fought each other, to unify. What are they going to unify behind? They're going to unify behind the banner of Allah. And they will become the Muslim army, the army of Muhammad. Okay? And this army, and Muhammad is ready. He's ready to really get serious about spreading the word. And so he goes to war. Now, where would you guess would be the first place Muhammad would go to war against? Well, you are correct. First of all, he goes to war against agricultural areas. This is one of the things that is an oddity of this story. Remember I told you that typically in wars of nomads versus agriculturalists are victorious because they have more people, therefore they have more specialized laborers, therefore they have more specialized labor products, especially weapons. This is one of those oddities of history in which the opposite happens. Okay? And one of these agricultural areas, and I think you probably guessed what I was just saying a moment ago, is that the Muslims went to war against Mecca, and they are victorious in this. Okay? And so Muhammad is very happy to defeat his to conquer his old city, to take control of his old city, to defeat the enemies from his hometown. Okay? And this is not going to stop. The Muslim army is going to continue. It's going to continue throughout Muhammad's lifetime and after. Okay? And after. And this is a very important aspect of this. This is not just Muhammad. This is going to go beyond Muhammad's life. Okay? And what kind of places are they going to conquer? Well, I think if you sort of, the Muslims conquer one of the greatest, hugest empires of history, to be honest with you. We're going to see where they conquered. You know, you think about it, where do you see Muslims today? Well, you see them all throughout the Middle East. Okay, so this is since the 600s and 700s, that the Middle East has been controlled by Muslims ever since Muhammad's lifetime. Okay, Mesopotamia, same thing. Mesopotamia is basically Iraq, the country of Iraq today, Muslim country. If you think about, they moved into Egypt. This is, you think about all the way across, from Egypt all the way across to Tunisia, to Morocco, all the way across northern Africa, still today, Muslim. By the way, this is when the Sphinx lost its nose. So when the Muslims arrived, Muhammad's already dead. When the Muslims arrived in Egypt, they found that Egyptians were still worshiping the Sphinx. And so this is when the Egyptians This is when the Muslims climbed up there and they defaced the Sphinx and cut its nose off. That's where that comes from. And what will happen is that the Muslims will turn north into Europe, and they will invade Spain. They're going to cross at a place called Gibraltar. You know where, I guess I'll show you a map again. You know where Spain and Africa almost meet, okay? Right there, okay? So the Muslims come all the way across here and they cross into Spain in the very early 700s. And they stay in Spain for a while. They're in Spain. The Muslims are in Spain for 700 years. They're there for a long time. And basically what is happening is wherever the Muslims are going, they're converting people to Islam. Well, they want to do this to Europe. They want to convert Europeans to Islam. Well, we know that Europe did not fall to the Muslims, and eventually even Spain will kick out, after 700 years, the Spanish will kick out the Muslims. But the most significant event happened in France, and the invasion of the Muslim army into France was stopped by our old friends, the Franks. Remember my discussion about Charlemagne, the most famous Frank? Well, this guy may be even more famous. This was Charlemagne's grandfather. Okay, Charlemagne's grandfather is the one who destroyed the Muslim army that came into France in 732, exactly 100 years after Muhammad dies. And this famous Frank has one of the great names of history. His name was Charles Martel, but he is historically known as Charles the Hammer. Isn't that one of the great names? Charles the Hammer, Charlemagne's grandfather, is the one. And you can make the argument, look, I think this is a very easy argument to make. You can make the argument that Christianity is saved in Europe, and therefore, in general, Christianity is saved. If Charles the Hammer does not, and the Franks do not defeat the Muslims, Muslims are going to probably march through Europe and convert everybody in Europe to Islam at that time. Remember, of course, Europe is fractured. The Franks are really the strongest ones, and that's what happens. Okay, so what should we remember? We should remember that of the importance that Muhammad was the principal author of the Quran, and therefore he is the greatest influence on the Islamic religion. Okay, so you could, well, Christianity has Jesus. Okay, he's obviously the most influential, but Christianity also has all these saints and all these other different people and the apostles and all of these. You can make the argument all of these authors of the Old Testament, etc., and all these influential people before Jesus. Okay, there's lots of influential people that anybody can study that wants to study Christianity or practice Christianity. Whereas in Islam, there's really two people. Okay, there is Allah, obviously, and there is Muhammad. Now, there's a couple of differences from Jesus. We sort of think of these two guys as the founders of these monotheistic religions. There are two major differences. And the first one is that you would have to argue that Muhammad was a political leader. He was somebody who was interested in not only leading, but also ruling. Okay? Now, there's two, it's kind of the same, but there's a little bit of difference there. Okay? Yes, he was a leader, but he also wanted to be a ruler. This third, number three here, also unlike Jesus, as we have to admit, is that Muhammad was a military leader. Okay, so this is very important to keep in mind as well. These are major differences between the two men. Okay, let's go to this and say, okay, one of the things that we should sort of think about when we think about, I think many people in the West, in the United States, they don't understand Islam. And it's difficult when you look at it from a Western sort of viewpoint, magnifying glass. You know, one of the things we say in the West is we want to keep church and state separate. I just talked about that with Charlemagne, right? We want to keep things separate. We want to keep church and state different. We want to have those things somewhat divided. Muslims don't want that, and we shouldn't be surprised by that because, when I go back up here, Muhammad was a political leader. And so Muslims want their governments in the nations they live in to have a religious aspect to them. They want the Quran to be an influence on their governments because they believe that the Quran is the ultimate say. And so my point here, number 4, is that in many cases, when Muslims move to Western countries, one of the issues that happens is that many Muslims want to use the Quran as the laws they live by first and foremost above the laws of the nations they live in. Okay? So this is like saying if a Muslim moves to the United States, they would obey the laws of the Quran above and beyond the laws of the Constitution, the United States Constitution. Now that's simplistic to put, but why is this? Okay, they see the Quran as the law of God, whereas, for example, the United States Constitution are laws of man. And that's the main thing that I think is the important thing to sort of keep in mind. One of the most extreme aspects of Muslim law is called Sharia law. I think a lot of you are aware of this. Those of you who took global studies, if you paid attention when Kahu talks about this, that Islam is splintered as well. There are Sunni Muslims and there are Shia Muslims. This is a dispute that went back to the generations right after Muhammad died about what direction Islam should go. These two sides do not like each other. Shias are one of the big hot spots of all is between Iran and Saudi Arabia. Iran is a Shia country. Saudi Arabia is a Sunni country. It's very, very. Look, it's pretty serious now. Pretty serious enmity between those two. Okay, so one of the things that all Muslims are supposed to do, it's one of the 5 pillars of Islam, is they are supposed to take a pilgrimage in their lifetime to Mecca. Okay, and what this pilgrimage is called, it's called the Hajj, H-A-J-J. Okay, and this is something that every Muslim in the world should do at least once in their life. It's usually in the summer. So they go to Saudi Arabia, and by the way, Shias will go as well, okay? And they go to basically what this is a big, huge temple. And what you can see here is look at all these people. I mean, this thing is astounding how many people go to this. And the goal is to get to that black thing, that black cube over there. Here's a close-up shot of that black cube. The black cube is called the Kaaba or the Kaaba. Even though it's spelled like we would spell it in Hawaii, we would call it, it's spelled K-A-A-B-A. We would say Kaaba, but they pronounce it Kaaba. It's a cube. It's a building made of granite. It's 43 feet tall, and it's considered the house of Allah. And what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to, when you get there, you circumambulate the Kaaba. In other words, you walk circles around it. And you're supposed to, when you go, there's lots of other things you do. There's all kinds of stuff. And this is the main thing. You circumambulate it 7 times counterclockwise. And you do it 3 times fast and 4 times slow. And these are all part of the aspects of what you're supposed to do. Here's a even closer up shot of what that thing looks like. This is the cover of a book called the Muhammad Code. And you get sort of an idea of how big it is with those people standing right next to it. And you get an idea of what that's like. Okay? All right, so there you go. There's our discussion of Muhammad today. Certainly you can see how this is influential today. My next story I'll tell you will demonstrate it even more so. And all these types of things come together, and we'll sort of see all these things come together in a way in the modern era, in the modern world. These things all bubble up in the modern world as well. Okay? All right. Hope you enjoyed that story. Aloha.